Imagine leaving high school and then starting your life in a totally new country. This was my journey. I left high school and then came to the UK. But the UK really shaped who I am today because if we look at it, my adult life was pretty much based in the UK. So there's a lot of factors that I can say contributed to how I see life and also how it has shaped me as a person. When I was in Zimbabwe growing up, I didn't have a lot of experience like going to the rural areas. I remember I used to go from grade 1 to grade 7. Yes, I used to go to the rural areas where my grandmother was, and then pretty much that stopped when I started going to high school. So that was the only sort of like different environment that I had apart from just growing up in Harare. So sometimes people get surprised that I haven't really been to the local high densities, even in Harare. I just hear about them, but I haven't really been to there. We didn't have a lot of relatives or even friends at the time for us to even have the opportunity to travel even around Harare. So when I came over here, the one thing that really shook me was the fact that automatically you want to be part of a community. And at the time, a lot of Zimbabweans were in the area that I arrived, which was Luton. But my idea or my mentality was, oh, this is a community of Zimbabweans, let me be a part of it. But I found it very, very weird and very, very difficult because there was a lot of resistance, a lot of jealousy, a lot of envy. In fact, I remember the time when I was in Luton where your fellow Zimbabweans will call the authorities to get you into trouble, like literally pick up the phone and get someone into trouble. So I used to observe this and I used to ask myself, why would anyone want to do that? Because surely that's an evil thing. Someone has spent so much money to buy a ticket to come to a new country. There you are, bound by identity, and yet people do this to each other. So the other experience I also had was sometimes you get friends or even family members, they will promise you before you leave Zimbabwe that they're going to do this for you. But as soon as you arrive, either they don't pick up the phone or they change the goalposts completely, leaving you in a state where you don't even know where to start. So that in itself, I found it very, very disturbing. And it took about 5 years for me to realize that this is not an environment that I can survive in, because it's too stressful and at the same time, it's not bringing any good. Now, I know that not every Zimbabwean is like that. I'm not trying to say every single Zimbabwean has that attitude or that mentality, because even from this channel, yes, there are people that are negative and all of that, but for the most part, I've realized that there's a lot of positive people there, and this is why I'm also willing to work with a lot of diasporans in our project called Kumusha Investors, where we're going to be coming together as diasporans and putting our heads together and invest in projects back home that will benefit us financially or even in retirement. So yes, there are some Zimbabweans that are very, very solid, very, very good, and who are on pretty much the same wavelength. So what I used to observe was there was a lot of jealousy and a lot of competition. So at the time, there used to be a company called Yes Car Credit. Yes Car Credit. And we used to work as cleaners, right, at the factory. But you would find that people are competing to buy these cars. Yet at the time, in order to pay for these payments, you'd have to do a lot of overtime. So I used to ask myself, why even put yourself in a position where you're paying 300 a month pounds to purchase a car, yet you're just a cleaner? Why? And at the time, my very, very first car in the UK was a Volvo 440. And I remember that car, Volvo 440. And the reason why I fell in love with that car was because it had heated seats. It was a very small car, but it had heated seats. Very, very comfortable. And I recall at work, people used to say, you need to upgrade your car. You need to upgrade your car. You can't be seen driving this car. And at the time, people were buying these Peugeot 406s. So at that time, I just saw that, okay, we may be Zimbabweans, but we're operating on different frequencies. Because for me, when I first came here, I really felt the pain of working in the industries, in the warehouses. It was very painful. In fact, that's where I defined, this was my own definition. I remember there was a place where we used to load trucks, and it was throughout the whole night, just loading these long trailers. I think the place was called, no, it wasn't just, what was it called again? Anyway, I'll remember it. So at this place, there used to be like conveyor belts of products which we needed to load up in these trucks, 30-ton trucks. And this was work that was done pretty much throughout the whole night. These conveyor belts would not stop. Products will be coming, product after product. And the noise, I mean, this was so crazy. Even during the break, someone would come and take on your place while you go for a break. In fact, that job was so tough that although I had a back injury, that job made it even worse because I used to carry a lot for 8 hours, pretty much nonstop. And I defined that this was slavery. There is no way we could survive and work like this. And remember, this was agency work as well. There's no way we could work like this, for an X amount of time. So I started working on a strategy to better myself. And I'm sure some of you know, I've told this story before. I started learning how to build computers. Of course, I had IT experience because I was certified in Microsoft and Cisco, but I couldn't get jobs in those fields. So I started learning how to build computers from scratch. And I remember at the time I used to buy magazines because the internet wasn't that fast. Believe it or not, at the time, the internet speeds were so low that it was not even worth going on the internet to do any considerable research. And there was no YouTube either. So I used to read a lot of magazines. I would buy magazines every single month. And I also used to buy Linux magazines as well, just to learn how the Linux operating system works for networking. So anyway, as people were buying these things and buying trucks to send back home and all of that, I focused on education. I wanted to better myself. So I started studying. I remember I used to do this Red Hat course in the evening at Dunstable College. And I really learned a lot from there. It was a very eye-opening experience. So my idea there was to better myself, because when I looked at the system, I realized that if you're going to be going for manual work, you're going to struggle, and you can only do it for a certain amount of time. So as I was studying, I could see people now still looking at me like, this guy is a show-off, or he doesn't want to be like us. And there was a lot of envy and jealousy around that time as well. And then finally, I really decided to detach myself from the community completely. So I came to Birmingham, to an area called Erdington. And I did not know anybody here, there in Birmingham. And that was my starting point. And because of the toxicity around the Zimbabwean community, I vowed that I will never be a part of the Zimbabwean community ever again, because there's nothing I can benefit from it. That is how bad, things were in my experience here. So I just started focusing on making sure that my income had different sources of income, and I also tried to do it in such a way that I did not work so hard. Of course, initially I would, but the idea was for me to set up my own business, because after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I realized that this idea of getting a salary is a dead end. Well, according to the book, because the taxes are against you, and that is the area where the employment, that is the area where you get the most, taxed the most. And then it gets better until obviously you get to the investor part. But at that time, I just started working hard on trying to better myself. And this is where the idea of setting up a design agency came through. I taught myself how to design websites. I started teaching web design and so on. And even through that, as a young man growing up, I still had to battle the idea of knowing what it is to be a dad, how to be a father. But at the same time, I also had to learn how to balance the stress that comes with the work. And that in itself also shaped who I am, because there's certain traits I started developing which were crazy. I started snapping a lot. I just get, so upset, so angry over the tiniest of things, because things are not working out, because these experiences were like experiences that I was experiencing for the first time, and I didn't know how to deal with them. And as you can imagine, you have no community to help you out. You have no relatives really, because here people are too busy doing their own thing. You'll be very surprised that you can have, or at least from my experience, from what I've seen, you can have relatives and not speak to them for a very, very long time. It's very common because everyone is busy. Those weekends that you set aside and say, you know what, I want to rest, perhaps that's the last time you would really want to sit down with friends or family and all of that, especially if you're goal-oriented and, you're always behind time to achieve what you want to achieve in life. So again, that was very, very difficult. But through the experiences that I went through, from the letdowns from friends and family and all of that, there's one promise I made myself. I said, I will never, ever give anyone the opportunity to say Without them, this is why I am where I am today in life. And I can safely say right now, to be where I am, to have achieved what I've achieved, no one can take credit for that except God. No one. Absolutely no one. And I wanted to make that a point because I realized that sometimes you start getting all this negativity because we are stuck in this competition world where if I help this person, they might be better than me. Because really, if you look at it, why are we even here on earth? Why are we even here? So for those of you who are religious, obviously we were created to worship God. But for the most part, people are here to measure each other, to compete. Who's got the best house? Who's got the best car? Whose kids have been educated better than the others? You know, what are our achievements in life? They're all material. So you'll find that everything that's happening in life, or for the most part, is just competition. We live our lives for looking better than the next person. You want to have the better hairstyle, the better phone, the better this, the better that. So for me, that type of lifestyle is pointless. It's really pointless because it's a never ending. It's like chasing your tail. It's never ending and it's so stressful. And that is where I started thinking about living my life in my own lane. So if I were to go to Zimbabwe, I don't care what people think, whether I brought presents for anyone, whether I go there without the brands, the labels and everything. I don't care. That's not my problem. That's that person's problem for thinking that I haven't got this or I haven't got. That's their problem, not mine. Because I had things or goals that I had set in my life that I knew that these goals are going to get me somewhere. And my goals are not necessarily the next person's goals because people are different. One person may prioritize to drink and watch football with friends, whereas me, I look at that and say, no, hell no, I'm not going to do that because that drinking has health issues. And the time spent or wasted watching senseless things and visiting people, following parties and following all these events, I could use it better. Now, am I saying that this is the right approach and everyone should do that? Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, everyone does what works for them. But for me, I had to do that because of the experiences I went through. So as time went on, I also realized that yes, working is good. Having your own business is good. But again, that is also a dead end because there are so many factors that you can't control. Like, for example, there's rules in this country where those things, no matter what you do, you don't have any influence on them or you can't change them. For example, you can save, let's say 10,000. After 1 year, you wake up, you realize that the inflation has gone higher. That's got nothing to do with you. You have not played a role in that, and now your money, instead of being 10,000, now it's less. So this is where the idea of trying to invest in other areas and creating different sources of income came through, and that to me was a breakthrough because the kids grew older and older. The demands were even more and more because at the end of the day, if you look at it, one of my main fears in life or in the diaspora was to raise children in a bad way, or not intentionally, but one of my main fears was to have children and they end up getting messed up. Like, let's say the daughter, she starts going out there drinking, having boyfriends, coming home whatever time they want, or even my sons getting involved in things that are not right. Of course, I can mention the whole list of things, but you know what I mean. That to me would give me sleepless nights, knowing my child is out there, is probably causing harm to someone, or they're doing things that are harming their lives. And every now and again, when I talk to my sons, I gave them a speech when they reached 16. I gave them examples of relatives back home who did not do well because they let opportunities pass. So I said to my sons, do you see such and such? And such and such? If you don't take care of this opportunity in life, you're going to end up like that, because we live in a world where education is very important, very, very important. And messing up your basic stages of education is going to be a big problem. You're going to need your O levels, you're going to need your A levels, and even better, you're also going to need some sort of qualification for you to be able to do anything in this world, unless of course you're living in a society where technology and education does not matter, which is not the case. And if you mess up your O levels and your A levels, you are done for life, because trying to fix those issues at a later stage is harder than you think. And I even went on and said, here, I can only live with you if we are doing anything productive. But if you're just here because you just want to live and survive, no, I had to sacrifice my life for you to get a very good education so that you are 50 steps ahead of everybody else. So I had to do without. My wife had to do without. All these were sacrifices to make sure that all the kids had a very good foundation in terms of exposure, whether be it sports, the three of them were in elite sports, here in the UK. Academically, they're all very, very good. So in that area, I wanted to make sure that I don't get those sleepless nights, because it's very, very, like for me, I'm very sensitive. I mean, just knowing that your son is out there doing crazy things and getting involved in things that are not right, that to me would be a nightmare. But thank God, it worked out and I don't have to worry about that. So there also came a point, and this is something that I learned, because coming here to the diaspora, the idea was, okay, you can just retire here, what's the problem, And at the time, there was no option. It was just a dream to be able to travel back to Zimbabwe. And traveling back to Zimbabwe was not easy. It was not easy. It was so tough, because I remember when we used to plan, we used to save money sometimes for the whole year or even 2 years for us to go back to Zimbabwe as a family. And we used to use this company, I'm forgetting the company name now, but we used to pay in installments to buy our tickets. And I'm saying this because people think that making that journey back home to Zimbabwe is very, very easy and straightforward. It's not. There's a lot of sacrifices that go there. And this is why sometimes when people say, oh, we're expecting some iPhones, we're expecting these brand clothes and all of that, it's not as straightforward. And sometimes it builds resentment towards, diasporans. But it's because there's a lot that needs to go into it, just to make that trip happen. So in that regard, when it came to retirement, there was no way I was going to be able to retire back home, because there was no plan. The money was not there, and it was just a dream. And to think about it now, it's so scary that if certain things hadn't happened in my life, I would be stuck here in the diaspora. And it may seem like people are being funny when they say they can't afford to retire in Zimbabwe. People assume that just because we're in the diaspora, it's easy. We can just retire. I remember just before COVID, I had no plan of retiring back in Zimbabwe. Absolutely no plan, because I had no money. As I mentioned, all the money just went towards making sure the kids have a very good start in life. And that was it. It was all hand to mouth. Of course, prayers get answered, and certain situations happen in life where you get a breakthrough. And my breakthrough came, and I was able to do what I'm doing right now, which is amazing. But I don't take it for granted that I was able to achieve this, because it's not easy. It's not easy. The diaspora is tough. Before I came here, I used to watch football, Liverpool, Manchester playing, and just seeing how the stadiums was so neat, everything was so built up nice, and everything had order. I assumed that was a reflection of the lifestyle pretty much throughout the country. But when you go to places like Berry Park or Small Heath, then you start to realize, oh my goodness, there's areas that are even crazy. And to a degree, those areas are worse than how I grew up in Zimbabwe. That to me was an eye. But I had to make sure that I aim to do at least better than I did, or at least better than what my parents achieved. And that became my drive. But all in all, what I learned about the diaspora was there are so many opportunities here, but you have to be super focused. And you need to have a team of people who are like-minded for you to be able to achieve your goals and for you to be able to move in the right direction. But to come up with that, it is almost impossible, because as I mentioned, a lot of people are in competition. Do you know that since creating this YouTube channel and me documenting my journey of trying to retire back in Zimbabwe, there's people that have reached out to me and just said, hey, Ruwa Organic, I just want to give you an idea for your business. This is working for me. I'd like you to consider this. These are people I haven't even met. That just goes to show that there are people out there who have a very good heart, and people who are in your same wavelength. But those are the type of people you need. But I'm able to say that because I have a YouTube channel. But what if you are on your own there? You don't have a YouTube channel. You don't have a way to communicate with people like that. How do you do it? It's very, very difficult. So in that case, I'm in a very privileged situation to be able to get people to reach out to me like that. Now, when it comes to the Zimbabwean community, what I've learned is the Zimbabwean community is a community where we pride ourselves in being very intelligent and very educated. On that, I beg to differ. I think we elevate ourselves too high in that regard. because I don't think we are very educated. I think we are the literacy rate is what is very high. A lot of Zimbabweans can read because obviously of the education system and the foundation that we had growing up in Zimbabwe based on the policies that were there. So it's the literacy rate that is really high, not the very educated part. The literacy rate, yes, I can agree with you all day, every day. But to say we are very educated, nah, I'd like to see proper stats on that. And the reason why I say that is some of the things that we do and say, they don't really come from someone who's educated. The reason why I'm saying that is because I see a lot of responses, a lot of debates, even online amongst Zimbabweans. And for the most part, these debates or arguments, they end up being statements of insult and there's no substance. You hear people attacking you saying, I doubt if you even have this based on the statement you've said. That's not an argument. That comes from a very smart person. If you're a smart person, state your facts and, put your arguments in a very compelling way. That way, then it's easier for anyone to see, where you are coming from and where you agree and where you differ. And as a result, we've carried this idea that we are very, very intelligent. And for that, everyone will have an answer to every problem. Right now, ask a random person about what needs to be done in Zimbabwe. Everyone has his take on that. But then you ask them, how are you doing in areas where you have full responsibility? You'll find that intelligence is not being applied. You'll find that they can't even handle the marriage. You can't even handle raising up children with the intelligence. You can't keep up with even basic things to uphold a solid family. So where's the intelligence there? Because the intelligence also covers men and women. So that idea, I rejected it very, very fast. And as a result, I made sure that I don't just listen to people that just speak without experience, because these are just thoughts. And sometimes I laugh because when I'm online and I'm reading comments, for the most part on Zimbabwean content creators, everyone has crazy theories about what needs to be done here, what needs to be done there. If you ask them, do you have experience in this? They don't. Have you been a politician? No. Have you worked in the government? No. Have you been a farmer? No. Do you run a business? No. But people have something to say. That to me, I find it very, very fascinating. But as for me, what I did was I evaluate where the advice is coming from. If the advice is coming from someone who hasn't done it before, or it's coming from someone who has no clue, no experience whatsoever, I don't take that. I don't take that advice. And that has helped me a lot, because it's very easy to make a lot of mistakes just by taking random knowledge. So even online, I'm very wary about information I take from where, because in these Zimbabwean communities, of course, I'm not part of the Zimbabwean community here in the diaspora, but from what I hear, it's just people copying people, and people just follow trends, right? It's all trendy, and then everyone just goes in that direction. And that herd mentality is very, very dangerous. So that idea has shaped me to be the person who I am today. And those lessons are lessons that I'm also impacting on people who are on the same wavelength, and also to my children. It hasn't been easy, but it has also been eye-opening. And for the things that have happened in my life, which a lot of people may see and say, wow, people are so unfair. How did they treat you like this? Why did they treat you like that? And you see, I'm not a crybaby. I'm actually glad that I went through those difficulties, because without going through those difficulties, was I going to get a breakthrough? Was I going to make decisions that I need to be doing this in life and that in life without that hardship? Possibly not. So I'm actually glad that I've suffered and gone through all those things in life. I'm not bitter at anyone. I'm not even feeling sorry for myself or wanting people to feel, pity that, oh my goodness, Ruwa went through all of this. No. I'm actually glad I went through that, because sometimes if you have a soft life, you make soft decisions. So in my case, I was swimming at the deep end, and I found a way to swim and save myself. And that to me is one of the greatest things that have happened to me in the diaspora. I'd like to hear your experiences as well. Add them in the comments box below. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.